April 6, 1945, 05:47 hours, north of Okinawa, Station 2 on the radar picket line. A destroyer rides the chop like a metronome, antennas turning, boilers humming under battle steam. In the dim slate east, a combat information center comes to life. SG surface search warms. SC-2 air search builds a ring of pips at long range, and a fighter direction officer leans over a plot where grease pencil vectors look like a spider learning geometry. Two truths share the minute. Japan's special attack raids have been punching through with terrifying success, and the U.S. Fifth Fleet has moved the fight miles away from the carriers, building a kill web with steel on the horizon and fighters stacked in the sky. Promise of value: a tight, numbers-first breakdown of how radar picket destroyers, fighter direction CICs, and layered CAP turned suicide tactics into a solvable problem. Roadmap: the web, Stations 116, voice nets, launch ladders. The tools: SG-SC2 search, MK-1222 fire control radar, VT-fuzed 5, 38s, LCSL, LSMR rocket ships. The process: detect, declare, vector, intercept, finish. And the payoff: more interceptions, fewer leakers, saved flat tops, despite heavy losses on the outer ring. If clear, evidence-driven warfighting breakdowns help you build better videos. Tap subscribe and stick with me. Now let's turn the sky into a trap. Start with the geometry. The picket line pushed destroyers and support craft far beyond the carrier screen, stations 1 to 16 arcing around Okinawa like a watch dial. Each station carried an air search set, SC2 or later SK, a surface set, SG, to keep the sea picture honest, and a CIC tuned for speed. Talker nets alive, ID matrix on the bulkhead, and a fighter direction officer with authority to burn gas. Voice nets stitched the dial together, local picket net, fighter direction net to the fighter direction tenders or carrier controllers, and strike channels for CAP. Above the line, stacked combat air patrols, F-6F Hellcats and F-4U Corsairs, held in vertical launch ladders, low cap to pounce on sea skimmers, mid cap to meet raids at altitude, high cap as reserve to dive and finish. Mini hook: range buys time, time buys choices. Verdict meme: detect left of launch, kill left of fleet. Detection was a choreography of wavelengths. SC2 painted the blob first, SG refined bearings on surface clutter and sea skimmers, IFF ticked or stayed silent. CICs ran raid plots with estimated times to marshal and times to feet wet. Controllers flashed vectors with short, calm phrases. Buster 090 Angels 5, raid 30 right 20 commit. Pilots read the board in their headsets. Angels, bearing, bogey strength, commit authority. While CAP turned, picket guns came ready. MK-1222 paired air search with fire control, letting 538 mounts track with directors that could take radar range and bearing. VT-fuzes, the radio proximity brains in nose cones, turned near, misses into lethal spheres, especially when gunners fired curtain patterns down a kamikaze's run. Add LCSL and LSMR close-in escorts, gun and rocket craft made to smother approaches with HE, and a single station became a hedgehog, bristling for impact. Numbers matter. Moving the tripwire dozens of miles forward meant CAP could engage minutes earlier. Every minute pulled from the attacker was a minute the carriers kept. Process made it repeatable. A raid crossed the picket line. SC2 made first contact. SG confirmed low flyers. The CIC declared the raid and pushed a vector to the nearest CAP element. Pilots rolled, throttles forward. The director kept them on a converging course while the pickets' guns set fuse and elevation by radar. If fighters broke the raid, kills and scatter, the leakers ran a gauntlet of VT shells and rocket bloom from LCS LSM ships that lived to be ugly at close range. Mini-hook. The outer ring pays the bill so the center can stay rich. Verdict meme. Push the fight outward until the enemy runs out of blood before you run out of hull. Costs were real. Pickets on the dial were magnets for pain. Alerts turned to dives in seconds. A clean horizon could explode into wakes and smoke. Yet outcomes changed. More raids were met at range, more tracks died on vectors, fewer suicide dives reached the big decks. The CIC discipline mattered most. Plotters kept the raid picture unbroken. Controllers resisted the urge to chase singletons and held KP to the kill box. Gun crews waited for the controller's clear deck before dragging shells across friendlies. And when a hit landed, damage control drilled like a religion. Foam, shoring, counter-flood, turning catastrophe into survival. Numbers again? Not for spectacle, but for sense. Pushing detection out by tens of miles gave CAP 2, 3, sometimes 5 extra intercept windows. VT shells multiplied 5 lethality by making close count. Rocket ships cut the last half-mile into a comet trail of HE. The web never erased loss, but it moved loss to the edge, where the fleet could afford to pay it. Examples make the math human. On the Kikusui mass raids, picket stations ate punishment. Lafayette Station 1 survived hits by dozens of attackers only because her CIC kept vectors flowing to Corsairs overhead, while her 538s tied to MK-1222 through VT-fuzed curtains. Radar pickets sank and bled, but every minute they bought upstream turned carriers into factories instead of casualties. Typical CAP cycles stacked 4 divisions at staggered angels. A controller might hold one to sanitize leakers, while sending 2 to the merge and keeping a top cover for second-wave stragglers. Launch ladders on the big decks ran like choreography. Deck run-ups timed to picket calls. Recovery windows flexed to keep a roof on the dial. Voice nets were the glue. Brevity, no poetry. Raid 20 left 10, commit 2 low CAP, Angels 4. That sentence, multiplied across stations 116, is what turned Kamikazes from a shock into a schedule. Final frame. A destroyer at Station 7 banks smoke while a Corsair rolls off the top rope onto a dive-in spec. CIC calls splash. Controllers reset the ladder, and far astern the carriers keep steaming into the wind, turning pilots into fighters and fighters into a roof. If this breakdown helped, numbers first, myths second. Tell me in the comments which piece did the most work for Okinawa. Picket geometry, CAP ladders, or VT plus MK-1222. And what should we decode next? Fighter direction over radar silence, or how late war jammers and decoys bent raid plots into dead air?